Jaya Jaya Shri Guru Kalapataru Radhabhuta Jato Paraka Radhabhuta Jato Paraka Suchandra Kirane Karuna Suchandra Kirane Karuna Iha Ihalokana Ajachita mohena patita heri japahu Ajachita mohena patita heri japahu Jachi devalo harinam Jachi devalo harinam Aduramati agati Satataya satamati Nahi sukriti labali Shri Vrindavana Jugala bhajana dhana Shri Vrindavana Jugala bhajana dhana Jachi devalo harinam Niramal gaura Deva rasa sinchane Purala sab moneraya So charanam guje arati nahi ho wala So charanam guje rati nahi ho wala Rakavai snava जाको प्रकाश अद्भुत अद्भुत जाको प्रकाश जय जय नित्यानंदाद्वैत गौरांग जय जय नित्यानंदाद्वैत गौरांग निताय 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 गौरांग जय जय नित्यानंदाद्वैत गौरांग जय जय नित्यानंदाद्वैत गौरांग जय जय जसोदानंदन Priti Sandarbha Jai Jai Rohini Nandana Balarama Nityananda Jai Jai Mahavishnu Siyadaita Chandra Jai Jai Gadadhara Siva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Khandavasi Nara Hari Murari Mukunda Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Rai Ramananda Jai Jai Oriya Gauriya Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Hayate Nar Haben Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Tomra Sabai Mili Karo Daya Ami Ati jeno akul prane gaite pari. Nitai Gauranga Jano Janme Janme Gaite Parihani Tai Gauranga Jano Niraparadhe Gaite Pari Hari Tai Gauranga Gai Jano Hani Tai Gauranga Janme Janme Hani Tai Gauranga Akul Prane Hani Tai Gauranga Neche Neche Hani Tai Gauranga Bahutule Hani Tai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Dvaita Gauranga. Nagasrishtam Manumati Shachiputramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajamurupuri Mathurim Gostavati Radha Kundam Givaram Aho Radhika Madhavasam प्राप्तो यस्य प्रसिद्धकृपया श्रीगुरुं तं नतोऽस्मि। Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatapta Brajaballabha Pahimam. Yasya brahmeti sangyam vachidapi nigame yati chinmatra satta yang sho yasyam shakai sway vivavati vashayan eva mayam pumascha ekam yasyaiva rupam vilasati paramabhyomni narayanakyam sa Sri Krishna vidhatta swayamiha bhagavan prema tatpad bhajan sa Sri Krishna vidhatta swayamiha bhagavan prema tatpad bhajan. Gaura Shyamarusho Jwalaviramhalai Rakshnor Vilaso Savai Nityanti Dhirashesha Madana Kala Vaidagdhya Digdhatmavihi Anya Priyata Sudhakar Parimala Sudha Parimala Stomomada Bhiksada Anya Priyata Sudha Parimala Stomomada Bhiksada Radha Madhava Madhuri Bhiravita Chittang Mama Pramyatam Radha Madhava Madhuri Bhiravita Chittang Mama Pramyatam Guru Shastram Shraddha Ruchir Anugatir Siddhir Iti Me Yade Tat Tat Sarvam Charana Kamalam Rajati Yayo Kripa Madhi Kena Snapita Nayanam Bhoja Yugalo Sada Radha Krishna अशरणगति चाओ मम गति आलिभिः परिपालित प्रबलित सानन्दमालोकितः प्रत्याशंसुमनः फलोदयविधौ सामोदमामोदितः वृन्दारण्यभुवि प्रकाशमधुरः सर्वातिशायि श्रिया राधा माधवयो प्रमोदयतु माम् उल्लासकल्पद्रुमः इमो गौरी श्यामो मनसि विपरीतो बहिरपि सुरत् तत् तत् वस्त्रौ इति बुद्धजनै निश्चितमिदम् स कोऽप्यच्छ प्रेमा विकसदुभय स्फूर्तिकतया दधनमूर्ति भावं पृथक् अपृथक् इत्याविरुदभूत् श्रीरासामतुलां बिभर्ति नितराम् इत्युद्धव कीर्तयन् यासाम् अङ्घ्रिरजो न नाम हरिनायक स्वेन तुल्यो मतः तासां तत् प्रियता सुधाकरतनुं विश्वचकोरायिते नानेनानुगतां समस्तमहितां वन्दामहे राधिकाम् वन्दामहे 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 राधिकाम् प्रेमायोऽसौ राधिका कृष्णयुग्मम् स्वानन्देन प्लावयित्वा सखीश्च शश्वद्विश्वं प्लावयन् सुप्रसिद्धः सोऽयं बुद्धिहीनः समिद्धां करोतु सोऽयं बुद्धिहीनः समिद्धां करोतु जयति जयति नामानन्दरूपं मुरारे विरमित निज धर्म ध्यान पूजादियत्नं कथमपि सुखदातं मुक्तिदं प्राणिनां Paramamamritamekam 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 Jivanam Bhushanam Me Paramamamritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Paramam Amritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. I do all that to get courage to be able to speak. But when it's finished, then I don't feel like speaking anymore. I feel like just doing more kirtan. But of course, this is an extension of kirtan, is it not? So we're in discussion. We finished the discussion now of mukti. So now he started a new subject, and we started that already. We have to pay a little bit more attention and have a little bit less of me instead of rambling on like some old man at a dinner engagement. A loquacious old man, the one that everybody wants to get away from. So I'll try not to do that tonight. All right, so what we are doing here, we're talking about, so now he wants to say that Priti is more than Mukti. So this is important because each one of these Muktis has been more or less given a pass on account of its relative usefulness for expressing Priti. And indeed, from the other side also, even if one's desire for such mukti is not pure, it's still, even if that desire is not pure, it still has to go through Bhagavat Priti in order to give the result. That the impure devotee, whatever impurities are there, right? Krishna promises that he gives those things. All right, you want to see what that's all about? Right here, have a look. And sometimes that have a look can be quite a long journey. Nevertheless, let us move on here. I've forgotten everything I said yesterday, and probably that's for the best. Oh yes, we went into this new discussion. So there was that little side discussion, about the jivas. I hope we went through that yesterday without any problem. Now, Atta, new subject. Right? Priti is superior to Mukti. So that's just a translation of the first day. Atta, so when Jiva Goswami says Atta, then that means a new subject is coming up. And in some respect, there's a new subject or a new explanation that's coming. So he's bringing something new into the discussion. That's the point when he says Atta. So now Atta Mukti Bhyo Bhagavat. Let's make this bigger. Let us make it bigger. For the benefit of you all. Actually, I'm thinking now, and I did a practice run just a few minutes ago. And I was thinking that I would actually do maybe the Sanskrit and to give an explanation in Sanskrit. Now, because I have a few students, I think, who have become fairly adept. And I'm thinking, and I notice that there's a lot of people out there in the world who are interested in Sanskrit and who are actually learning. Right? And a lot of those devotees are actually learning Sanskrit. I see that some of them are far more intelligent and learned and so on than I am. So that's always intimidating because there's a natural sense of competition amongst scholars, just like there's amongst everybody else. Human beings have this tendency. So I never felt comfortable in the competitive atmosphere. Nevertheless, I can see that one can avoid the competitive atmosphere by simply recognizing the good qualities of all these other intelligent and learned people. But anyway, my point was that there are many people out there who are interested in speaking Sanskrit and having some kind of Sanskrit discussion and things that interest them. So why not have a discussion in Sanskrit on the Priti Sandarbha? So I'd like to just give a reading in Sanskrit and maybe here and there give some commentary. But I noticed that just like with the English, that when I start giving commentary, then I start to blab on and on and on and on and on, and I go around in circles and I lose my point and so on. Very tedious matter. So at any rate, I'm going to read it in Sanskrit anyway for the benefit of everyone, because I firmly am a believer in language as a tool of conditioning. It's very difficult for us. I'm speaking now to some of my friends who are living in the West, who are not necessarily of Indian origin, who are trying to cultivate Krishna bhakti in circumstances that culturally, let's say, are not very favorable. So remember that bhakti is a lot about play acting. It's about acting. It's about acting as a devotee. Like Putana acted like a devotee. So a devotee acts like a devotee. Right? So you act like a devotee. That's what it means to be a devotee. So to do that has two aspects. One is external and one is internal. So externally, one does practices, and internally also one does practices. But of those practices, the role that language plays is particularly significant because we structure our thinking system in the language which is most natural to us. So now somehow or other we would like to transfer our attention, to transfer our consciousness to Goloka Vrindavan. Now if you were to tell me Brij Bhasha, or if you were to tell me Braj Boli, anything, everything is all very, very good. I don't mind. I think that if you know Sanskrit, then all the other ones will follow also according to your taste and according to your mood. But Sanskrit holds a very privileged place, and the Goswamis kept it in that privileged place. That wasn't mean that they were making Sanskrit exclusive. Rather they were democratizing Sanskrit. They were saying, look, and they translated it, and they made a big influence from the translations and the Padavalis. But the originals, right? The originals, because so few people spoke Sanskrit, they didn't get quite the same kind of widespread attention. Nevertheless, they were like the ocean of milk from which the Amrita was churned. All right. So, Atta Mukti Bhyo Bhagavat Pritir Adikyam Vivriyate. So we're going to talk about Mukti, that Priti is greater than Mukti. So, Tatra Yadyapi Tat Priti Vidatapi Na Santyeva. So these other Muktis, they cannot exist without Priti. Even the Sayuja, Bhagavat Sayuja. They cannot exist without Priti. Tatapi Keshanchit Teshan Swasya Dukkahano. Even so, some people, they are thinking of their own liberation. Swasya Dukkahano, they want to be free of miseries, so they're looking for that freedom, liberation. Samipyadi Lakshana Sampattao. So this is a great this is a great opulence. This is a great achievement to become an associate of the Lord. It's no small thing. So just to think of it in terms of an achievement rather than thinking of it as an opportunity for service, that kind of thing. Letting it come and create some sense of ego there. So Jiva Goswami says that seems strange that should exist, but nevertheless Jiva Goswami says that Keshanchit, sometimes in some people it exists. So when they desire mukti, but there's some other purpose behind it, some other tatparyam. Natu Sri Bhagavati Eva, the tatparyam is not in Bhagavan. In other words, the goal is not always directly to please Bhagavan. There's something else that creeps in there. So sometimes we see that that's the way that the scripture talks. The same thing is said about, for instance, Samanja Sarati and the queens. It says that sometimes their love is pierced by desire. In other words, some personal desire is still left in them, in the queens. They want something for themselves. So that's not in the gopis. So even in the point being, even in Dwarka, even the queens, there's something. This much. And so that's how he's measuring. Why does he measure with kubja? So kubja has prem. What kind of prem does she have? So her prem is, because they say it's tainted by lust. Why? Because she was a prostitute, so she was seeing other men also. So how you can see Krishna and see other men? Not possible. Well, as far as we know, she was seeing other men. So that's why Kubja is not considered to be someone to follow. She's only in the table, in the chart of Krishna's Madhura Rasa associates to fit in the category of Sadharani. Right? Sadharani. Because a Sadharani is a prostitute. So sometimes in the Rasa Shastra, there's a place that's given to the prostitutes. It's called the Sadharani. Right? So the Sadharani, so it was a position that she would play a role, but she herself was not bound in love to the person who loved her, really is what it comes down to. Nevertheless, she might be full of wisdom and certainly full of culture, very attractive in other ways also. Right, so the point was that there, in that case, Deshu Nyunata. So those people, in them, mukti is certainly a lesser thing, right? When it's tainted by some other desire, whether it's desire for liberation itself, or whether it's for some kind of gratification about, some pleasure derived from one's association with Krishna, some kind of worldly pleasure, like one becomes the pontiff, one becomes a guru, one becomes some big shot because one has become closer to God, and people recognize your holiness. So they come to you, oh holy man, oh holy woman, please remove my miseries. Anyway, so let's see, what does he go on to see. So now like this goes on. So tatra kaivalyaika prayojanam iti yad uktam tasya chartasya tatra aiva vishrantihi. All right, so there was a verse that was quoted previously, and I am going to find that verse in the Bhagavatam. So this is a very important verse, Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat. And this is at the very end of the Bhagavatam. So right near the end of the Bhagavatam, there are two verses in which it is said that the Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Veda and all the Vedanta. Right, so this one is 12, 13, 12. Right, so 12, 13, 12. So 12, 13, 12. So this is in the last chapter. There's 23 verses. So this is the last chapter, 11 verses from the end, what it says about the Bhagavatam. So this was quoted at the very beginning here in the first Anucheda. The first Anucheda was very long. We have to go. So I'm sure we talked about it back then. If we did it on, I don't even remember doing it. But at any rate, this is a very important verse. And so I'm just to make sure that I have it properly, I look in the book. So Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat Brahmat Maikatva Lakshanam Vastu Advitiyam Tan Nishtham Kaivalyaika Prayojanam. So this is the characteristics he's giving, summarizing what is the Bhagavatam. And this verse, it sounds very Vedanta-like. Right? And he says that Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat. Right? What is that? Sarva Vedanta Saram. He says Yat Brahmat Maikatva Lakshanam. The oneness of Brahma and the Atma. Brahmat Maikatva Lakshanam. Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat Brahmat Maikatva Lakshanam. What else? Vastwadvitiyam tananishtam. Vastwadvitiyam tananishtam. Kaivalyaika prayojanam. Vastwadvitiyam tananishtam. Kaivalyaika prayojanam. So this is the last thing that he says about the Bhagavatam. There's already been quite a bit of glorification of the Bhagavatam right there in the last couple of chapters. And the glorification of Harikatha and so on. There's another verse also, Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi. So that's also just right there. These glasses. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Okay, let's see the other one. Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Yasrim Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadarasamrita Triptasya Nanyatra Syad Ratih Kvachit. So that's the more common one that we hear. Right? Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Sri Bhagavatam Ishyate. So the essence of all the Vedanta is called the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tadarasamrita Triptasya, someone who has tasted its rasa and has been satisfied by that rasa. Nanyatra syat ratih kvachit. Will never be attracted to anything else. And the other one said, Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat. Brahmat Maikatvam Brahmaikatva Lakshanam. Vastwadvitiyam tananishtam. Kaivalyaika prayojanam. So it sounds like the two verses are completely different. One is kind of bhakti and the other one's kind of jnana. So Jiva Goswami, he says here, no, this word Kaivalyaika prayojanam, that the ultimate purpose of the Bhagavatam, or the ultimate purpose of the Vedanta, which is to Kaivalyaika prayojanam. I was thinking that I was sharing the screen here. My apologies. I thought that I was sharing the screen, but I wasn't. Right, so we're down here. Ata muktibhyo bhagavata priter adikyam vivriyate tatra yadyapi tatpritim vinata api na santyeva tatapi keshanchit tesham swasya dukkahano samipyadi lakshana sampattau api tatparyam natu Shri Bhagavati eva iti teshu nyunata tatra kaivalyaika prayojanam iti yad uktam tasya chartasya tatraiva vishrantihi. So now here, this is where I fall. Let's see what I'm sure that. Well, we have to go back and see what it said earlier on about this, because here he's referring us back to what was said before, and not having done my homework properly again, I've forgotten what he said. But anyway, let's look what he said. What we have as a translation here. Now we will explain how Bhagavat Priti, love for Bhagavan, is superior to Mukti. Although without Priti for Bhagavan, none of the Muktis are possible, yet some have interest in freedom from misery, even while having the fortune of being in the proximity of Bhagavan, or any of the other types of muktis. Let me think about that. That's not the way I was reading it. Tatapi keshanchit teshan swasya dukkahano samipyadi lakshana sampattavapi tatparyam. Okay. It's a chintaniyam. I'll have to give that a double check. All right, so yet some have interest in freedom from misery, even while having the fortune of being in the proximity of Bhagavan or any of the other types of muktis. Their interest is not purely in Bhagavan's service. Therefore, any such liberation is considered as inferior to Priti, in which there is absolutely no other interest. Therefore, the ultimate meaning of the word kaivalya in the verse, its sole purpose is kaivalya, kaivalyaika prayojanam, is Priti. He's saying that the word kaivalya here, that it vishranti. So the point is that mukti, we're talking about mukti here. So they say that mukti, really, ultimately what you're talking about when you're talking about mukti, you're talking about Priti. It's the ultimate mukti. That's what it is. Love for Bhagavan is the ultimate mukti. What does it say here? So it tells us to go and look somewhere else, but I'm not going to go and look somewhere else. You want to look somewhere else. It's in Anucheta number 1.7. All right, Tataiva Sarva Vedanta Ityadi Apraktana Pada Trayasya Vishranti Sa Tattva Bhagavat Sandarbhabhyam Shri Bhagavatyeva Darshita Tatraiva Tattva Padasasya Purnatva Stapanat Tataita Tapurvam Api Hari Leela Katha Vratam Mritanandi Tat Satsuram Iti Agranta Swabhava Varnane Tat Priter Eva Mukhyatvam Darshitam. All right, so here he's making some contextual arguments. So the contextual arguments about the position. So now he wants to come back because here at the very end, see the point is here he's saying, so now this is Jiva Goswami doing mop-up operation, right? He is mopping up. So he says, okay, this is I've declared. Now he's going to find all the instances where somebody might say, well, what about here? What about this? What about this? Right? So here someone says, well, what about this right here at the very end of the Bhagavatam, in the last chapter? There it says, the Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi. Brahmatmaikatva Brahmatmaika Lakshanam. the oneness of the individual with the Supreme Soul, that is the, uh, uh, the, the essence of all the Vedanta. So he just said before, so this previously, sending us back here. Amidam evam. It must be here somewhere. Where is it? I don't see it. Where is it? Sarva Vedanta Saramyat. No, this is not. Ah, here we go. Well, I'm not quite sure. I thought that, anyway, what is he saying here? Tathaiva Sarva Vedanta ityadi praktana padatrayasya. So praktana padatrayasya. But this one, so I was looking at the three previous ones. Ityadi purva. So what were the purva ones? So go back. 1, 2, 3, 9. Evam Purana Sandohas Chaturalaksha Udahritah Tatrashtadasha Sahasram Sri Bhagavatam Ishyate Idam Bhagavata Purvam Brahmane Nabipankaje Stitaya Bhavabhitaya Karunyat Samprakashitam Adimadhyavasaneshu Vairagyakhyana Samyutam Harilila Kathavratam Ritanandita Satsuram. So this is exactly what preceded. So that's what he's pointing to here. He says, look, another thing you want to understand about this Kaivalyaika Prayojana, and the meaning here, what's this Kaivalya? The meaning of this verse, we're talking about this verse here. What is it saying? It's right, we're talking about bhakti. And here at the very end of the Bhagavatam, it's using this language, which is all just completely, Kaivalya. Right? So he has to explain what this word Kaivalya is doing here. So he says in the previous three verses, right? In the verses preceding this one. So preceding this one, Sarva Vedanta Saram Yat. So what were those three verses? So 1, 2, 3. Right? So we start with Evang Purana Sandohas Chaturlaksha Udahritah Tatrashtadasha Sahasram Sri Bhagavatamishate. So what did I say? Is it supposed to be 3 or 4? Trayasya. So it was a Trayasya, right? So that's 1. No, Idam Bhagavad. So Idam Bhagavata Purvam Brahmane Nabipankaje Stitaya Bhavabhitaya Karunyat Samprakashitam. So the first thing he says, it was revealed to Brahma when he was situated within the Nabi Pankaja, within the lotus of Vishnu, and when he was afraid of death, and out of kindness it was spoken, it was revealed at that time. That's what he's saying. So it was revealed at the beginning of creation to Brahma. Adi madhyavasaneshu vairagyakhyana samyutam harilila katavratam ritanandita satasuram. So the whole thing, Hari Leela Amrita, it's full of Krishna's Leelas. And the devotees are all in joy at taking the nectar from all this Hari Leela Katha. So that was just the preceding words right before Kaivalyaika Prayojana. So this is what he's saying. Similarly, also, what's going on here? Something's wrong. Looks like something is missing here. Seems something's missing here. Perhaps not. Okay. Similarly, the ultimate meaning of the rest of the verse was also shown as Bhagavan in the Tattva and Bhagavad Sandarbhas. It is so because the full meaning of the word Tattva was established as Bhagavan in these two books. In the same way, in the prior verse, 12, 13, 11, actually he goes back 3 verses, I don't know why I didn't say that. Right, so Tataitat Purvamapi. In the same way, in the prior verse also, Priti for Bhagavan was shown in the course of describing the nature of Srimad Bhagavatam to be its most prominent feature. It delights the saints who are like gods with its nectarine pastimes of Bhagavan Hari. So the Priti for Bhagavan was shown to be its most prominent feature. So that's just in the previous, so in the verse prior to the Hari Lila, to this verse here, to the Sarva Vedanta verse that we're talking about, that was this one. See, Hari Lila Kata Vratam Ritan Nandi Tat Satsuram. It delights the saints who are like gods with its nectarine pastimes of Bhagavan Hari. So that, he says, is an indication that Priti is the prime subject of the Bhagavatam. So now to say that it's Kaivalya in the Brahmavadi sense would be to misunderstand how to harmonize that idea of unity with the idea of diversity. So to obliterate entirely the diversity destroys any potential there for having a meaningful unity. That's the problem. There's no meaning to unity if there's no diversity. All right, let's move on here. Hari Lila Katha Vrata Eva Amritam Santa Atmarama Eva Sura Iti. So here what he's just doing is explaining from the verse, right? He's saying that in that verse, these words here that were just quoted, Hari Lila, where's it going? Hari Lila Katha Vratam Vrata Amritam. So this is a compound here that's going together. So this is a difficult compound, to be quite frank. So Vrata means the Vrata, Hari Lila Katha Vrata. So Vrata is just simply a plural marker. It's what we call a collective noun. So Hari Lila Katha Vrata, all the collection of Hari Katha that's in the Bhagavatam, that is Amrita. And that Amrita, by that Amrita are made joyful the Sat Sura. So who are these Sat Sura? The Sat means the Santa. Sat means the Santa, the holy. So he says here the Santa means the Atmaramas. So it should be Atmarama, I think. Yeah? The Atmarama Eva Sura. So Sura, gods. So there's a metaphor, long metaphor. They are gods because of their holiness in being constantly joyful from drinking the ambrosia of immortality, that is all the different kinds of stories of Hari that can be found in the Bhagavata Purana. So that's his description of the Bhagavatam just before he says Sarva Vedanta Saramhi. So Sarva Vedanta Saramhi means all this Hari Lila Katha. So this is a problem that's everywhere there in the Bhagavatam. And of course, you know, if you want to favor one, so if you have two apparently contradictory ideas, well, naturally the question arises, is what's going on here? Is there a debate? Obviously, just right from the very beginning, no debate here. Everything is in harmony. If we say Brahman, we also mean Bhagavan. If we say Bhagavan, we also mean Brahman. If we say Paramatman, we also mean Bhagavan. If we say Paramatman, we also mean Brahman. It's just like the Christian Trinity. There's no difference between the three. But there are three different manifestations of the same absolute tattva. But we lend preference to one or the other of the version, one of the other aspects, one or the other of these revelations according to our level of awareness and consciousness and capacity to receive the mercy of God, to receive the mercy of Radha and Krishna, to receive the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the gurus who have been inspired by him. So Hari Lila Katha Brata Eva Amritam. So all these Hari Lila Kathas, they are ambrosia. The Santa are the people who are self-satisfied, who take pleasure in the self. The ones who don't need anything. So if they don't need anything, yet they take pleasure in it, well, what does that mean? So that's a very important point that's been made over and over again. Like Shukadev is the first and most important example. So what's next here? So Itang Satam Brahma Sukhanubhutya Iti Prasiddhehe. So this is the Atma Rama. Itang Satam Brahma Sukhanubhutya. This is another one of these verses that I swear to God, I've tried a million times to memorize it, and somehow or another, I always forget it. But I'm going to open up my Bhagavatam here, and I'm going to be the ignorant person. I'm not going to be pretentious at all. I'm going to admit to my lack of knowledge. But the point here is, of course, to relish. And that's why I placed a lot of emphasis on the sound of the Sanskrit. And this verse is one that's really quoted quite a bit, and quite a bit even right here in the Priti Sandarbha. So I still haven't, like I said, I'm still going through the Priti Sandarbha, and obviously I've just gone through it the first time. I've gone through, obviously I've gone through it before, but I'm just getting into it for you have to go over and over and over again in order to be able to extract the essence. So I'm still not finished extracting the essence, and the fact that there's some kind of a time limit being pressured on me that makes it rather uncomfortable, because I don't feel comfortable until I'm satisfied that I've got the essence, I've got the exact meaning that was intended. And I've expressed it as closely to the original as I possibly can. So sometimes I read it one way and then I see the translation is different. That puzzles me. I have to go back and look at it again. At any rate, I'm not going to worry about that here, but I'm going to move on to this verse from the 10th canto. This is about the cowherd boys. All right, so cowherd boys are enjoying with Krishna. So this verse is actually a glorification of Sakya Rasa. Itang satam brahma sukhanubhutya dasyam gatana paradaivatena Maya Sritanam Naradarakena Sakam Vijaharu Krita Punya Punjaha Itang Satang Brahma Sukhanubhutya Dasyam Gatanang Paradaivatena Maya Sritanam Naradarakena Sakam Vijaharu Krita Punya Punjaha. So that's a very important verse that comes up quite a bit because it's saying that the cowherd boys, Sakam Vijaharu Krita Punya Punjaha. So those who have performed masses and masses of pious activities, punya punja, krita punya punja, that these people, they enjoyed with Krishna. So now Krishna is being spoken of in a couple of different ways. So itang satam brahma sukhanubhutya. So here, sakam, Krishna is being described as Brahma Sukhanubhuti, of the Sats, of the holy people. So here he's saying Atma Ramas, that he is oneness with the happiness of Brahman, the experience of the bliss of Brahman. And the second group, Dasyam Gata Anam Paradaivatena, so those who had the mood of servitude, they perceived this same Krishna that the cowherd boys are playing with as being their supreme God. And then the last batch, you see, which is they, because it has a double meaning. So it says that Maya Sritanam Naradarakena. So those who are under the influence of the external Maya, they see that they're playing with Krishna as just a little boy. So they're playing with a boy. They see Krishna as a Naradaraka. But they also see as the Naradaraka, they're also under the influence of the Yoga Maya potency. And so they see Krishna also as a boy, their own age, playing with them, wrestling with them, playing hide and seek with them, singing, dancing, having fun together, all those things. So that's the verse. So why does he bring that verse? Well, he brought that verse up here because he wants to talk about this, the word satam that he's talking about. So itang satam brahma sukhanubhutya. So the one who's perceived, Krishna is perceived by the saints as one who is the, let's say, is the joy, the bliss of Brahman. And then there's another one of Parinishtito Pinayargunye Uttama Shloka Leelaya Jihita Chetara Grihita Chetara Rajarshi Hitam Yadaditavan. This is at the beginning of the Bhagavatam when Shukadev starts to explain. So he says, I was situated in transcendence. Parinishtitopi nirgunye. So I had transcended the three qualities of material nature. I was nirguna. I was in a nirguna state. I was in a state of transcendence, untouched by Maya. So this is one of the several verses about Shukadeva that says how he is an Atma Rama. So he was an Atma Rama. Parinishtito Vinargunye Utashma Shloka Leelaya Grihita Cheta Rajarshe Akyatam Yadaditavan. I forget exactly if I get that verse right. But at any rate, I heard Hari Katha, and my mind was forcibly attracted into Hari Katha. So this is what we say, O Itam Bhuta Guno Hari. That Krishna has such qualities that even people who are not interested in anything still find Krishna interesting and attractive. So even if you don't have anything in this world that is attractive, still you're attracted to Krishna. That is called, that means that Hari is greater than Brahman. That's what keeps to come back to that again, right? That we would rather play with another Dharaka, these boys. What a fortune to have such a friend as Krishna that they can play with. So what's the translation we have here? They who have accumulated heaps of piety in the past, sported in this way with Krishna, who is the personification of the absolute truth, bliss, and consciousness for the saintly, the supreme deity for those who have chosen to be his servants, and a human boy for those who have taken shelter of his illusory potency. So that last line there has that double meaning. And so for the cowherd boys, they process it. So because that would not be, they sported in this way. So he's the absolute truth. He's the supreme deity, but he's a human boy. So by saying a human boy like that, he's actually saying that his being a human boy is actually superior to his being the absolute truth or to being the supreme deity. Isn't that amazing? Right? And this is the whole point. And I'll tell you, we'll come to the end. When we come to the end of this, you'll be amazed, because the whole point is that the world is real, my friends. The whole point is that the world is real, because Krishna pervades the world. He pervades the world in every possible way. And so the exercise is to see Krishna in everything. That's the exercise. Because Krishna, the world is real. So Krishna is the reality of the real. He's the truth of the truth. So keep following the truth. You come to Krishna. Or you start with Krishna. So this last verse, O saintly king, although I was situated in transcendence beyond the gunas, my heart was captivated by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord. And so I took up its study, the Bhagavata Purana. Well, I see that I have managed to use my time. I will try my best to make this journey through the Priti Sandarbha as pleasing as possible. So now I will conclude with Kirtan. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Purnam adaha Purnam idam Purnat Purnam udachyate Purnasya Purnam adaya Purnam eva vashishyate. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Shyama Sundar Madana Mohana Vrindavana Chandra, Jai Jai Radha Raman Ras Bihari Sri Gokulananda, Jai Jai Radha Kanta Radha Vinod Shri Radha Govinda, Jai Jai Raseshwari Vinodini Bhanukula Chandra, Jai Jai Lalita Vishakayadi Jata Saki Vrinda, Jai Jai Sri Rupa Manjariyadi Manjariya Nanga, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kundalata, Jaya Vira Vrinda Tomra Kripa Kori Dehe Jugal Charanarvindam Deho Jugal Charanarvinda Deho Jugal Charanarvinda Deho Jugal Charanarvinda Deho Jugal Charanarvinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe 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 Govinda, Jai Shri Radhe Govinda, Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Jaya Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Jaya Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya. Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Radhe Govinda, Jai Shri Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Jai Radhe Govinda. Jai Radhe Radhe Govinda, Jaya Radhe Radhe Govinda Jaya 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 Radhe Radhe Govinda Jaya 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 Radhe Radhe Govinda Jaya Jaya Jai Jai Sri Guru Pada Padma Ki Jai 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 Swasti Guru Vesti Guru Gana Ki Jai 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 Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai 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 Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai Sri Bhagirathi Ki Jai 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 Sri Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki Jai 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 Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai 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 Sri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai 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 Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai 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 Go Mata Ki Jai 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 Sri Vrajabasi Gana Ki Jai 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 Ananta Kochi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai 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 Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai 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 Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Echai Gosaira Parisarana Vanda Jaha Vaite Vignana Sapo Avista Puram Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Radhe Shyam